Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Isaac Jamieson. I'm an Associate Director at DBTM, and I'm talking today on decarbonisation and green design of PHC facilities. The healthcare sector itself is currently responsible for around about 4.4% of all greenhouse gas emissions. If it was a country, it would be the world's fifth largest polluter. And it's projected that under a business as usual scenario, its actual level of emissions would triple between now and 2050. One of the effects of climate change is the increasing prevalence of heat waves. And the effects of these are far worse during high humidity conditions, where it's more difficult for the body to cool down. It's been shown that the highest wet bulb temperature humans can typically survive in for up to 6 hours is around 35 degrees centigrade. And as you can see in the illustration on the right, temperatures can far exceed that at times during conditions of heat waves. So in the instance shown, 14th April 2023, we actually had temperatures in Thailand of up to 45.4 degrees centigrade, which is unsustainable. The good news is design measures can be taken to help reduce both greenhouse gas emissions that exacerbate such conditions, and measures can also be taken to greatly lower local temperatures in the areas where people are. So this is giving you some background information with regards to the kinds of heat landscapes that can be experienced. Often in the countryside, it's far lower in temperature than in the cityscape, as you can see by the illustration there. The buildup of heat in the cities is often caused by the kinds of materials that are being used, and also the heat energy that's being pumped out from air conditioners, etc. With regards to the kinds of materials being used, that you can see by the soundbite in the top left of the screen, on a hot sunny day, you can have roof and pavement temperatures being up to 27 to 50 degrees centigrade hotter than the actual ambient air levels. So it is quite a significant problem that can be exacerbated by the wrong use of materials. And it's also been noted that any hard-won victories that are being achieved over climate change could easily be wiped out by the effects of uncontrolled urban heat islands. So it's definitely a matter we have to take on board, especially considering the fact that around about the present time, urban heat islands are contributing to around about 30% of all climate warming. Measures that can be taken to help address that include actually going in greening areas where people live, and also introducing more water areas as well to help cool down the areas. So in the illustration you see there, you have landscaping being used to help reduce ambient temperatures. It can also help reduce energy use as well, because with the local temperatures being dropped down, it means that less energy has to be spent on cooling for individuals. And in the illustration I've just gone and pulled up here, these thermal illustrations show the difference in the actual heat that can be experienced in different locations just by the kinds of landscaping that's used. Over on the left-hand side, you have hard landscaping being used, where you have high levels of temperature being gained. Over on the right-hand side illustration, where you have increased amounts of vegetation, you have a far cooler area. So you have the same buildings on the same site, but with far different cooling requirements. So the kind of outer landscaping and designing that we have for buildings and the surroundings can make a big difference. With regards to the buildings themselves, if you have vegetation providing shading for them, it can help reduce both the cooling and heating costs by up to around about 20 to 25%. And for areas where you have excess heat, shading, the AC units can improve their efficiency around about 10 to 15%. So these are significant changes that can be made using nature-based solutions. Also, you can have green roofs being incorporated as well to further help lower the heat island effect, and also make increase the amenity around about your location. In the illustration shown here, the half of the building that's had the green roof treatment can be seen from the thermal imaging that is shown on the right-hand side of the screen to be far lower in temperature than the traditional roof finishes. So you have extra levels of amenity, you're lowering the local temperatures, and additionally, you can lower the energy use as well. And it's been shown that for buildings of 3 stories and less, you can often have a 5 to 15% reduction in electricity use during summer periods because of the reduced cooling need that's brought on board by the use of the green roof. Green roofs can actually provide significant additional advantages as well. They can help act as capture areas for rainwater to hold them during extreme weather events. They can also be used for growing food to increase food security. So an example here is a rooftop garden at Singapore's Khoo Puat Hospital. And in that area, they're growing organic food that is prepared in the kitchens there for the people who are staying there to eat and the patients to eat. Any excess produce they have is sold to gain funds. Community members are also involved in the gardening in it, so it can really help build community spirit. The space is also enjoyed by the patients too. And a further benefit of this, it's been shown that increased contact with nature can help improve human immune system. So you're getting a whole raft of benefits being created by this additional initiative. Taking things even further, you can have green roofs that produce food that also produce energy for you. So this is basically the agrivoltaics process. We have agriculture and photovoltaics being used in the same location. And with the addition of the photovoltaic panels, you can actually reduce the watering needs of the plants. You can also give them shading as well during specific times of the day. And with systems such as the one shown here, they're actually adjustable, so you can alter the angle of them during the day so the plants get the correct amount of light and shade they need to help optimize their growth. And that can also be used to help protect them during strong rainstorms, etc. An additional benefit of that as well is the cooling effect of the vegetation on the photovoltaics can actually improve their efficiency around about 5 to 15% too. So you get an additional benefit from that, as well as having the provision for food being able to be created on roof space. You can have that also being taken along the facades of the building, such as in the instance here. We have vertical facades where fruits and vegetables and herbs are grown, and the vegetation itself is watered using stored rainwater, and also helps cool the air through evapotranspiration. You can have additional passive measures to help reduce the energy use within your building through introducing natural ventilation in situations such as the one shown here, where you take into account the actual layout of the site, the actual wind directions that are coming into play, and also where to go and use shading in the building and around the building to go and create the maximum levels of benefit. With regards to measures that can be taken to help reduce CO2 emissions, you can also pay close attention to the kinds of materials you use. And there's lots of innovative materials that are coming through just now. Carbon concrete, which you can see being featured in this slide, is one of them. And this type of concrete has the same kind of strength as traditional concrete, but it uses carbon fiber yarn instead of steel. And so it's rust-proof, it has a longer lifespan than typical reinforced concrete, and it also uses far less concrete itself. And it's being claimed that it can reduce CO2 emissions in construction by up to 50%. Another material that can be used is hempcrete blocks, as you can see here, which are the hemp lime mixture packed around a biocomposite structural frame. They can be stacked to over 9 meters in height. They're both structural and insulative in terms of acoustic insulation and thermal insulation. They're also fire resistant, help regulate humidity. They're non-toxic, and can even be used in earthquake zones. And a further bonus for it is for a building the size of a typical house, it can sequester around about 10 tons of carbon. Another material that's being increasingly used now within the building industry is biochar, which is created by burning biomass at very high temperatures. And it can be used in concrete, exterior render, insulation for bricks, plaster, etc. It's 100% natural and it captures and stores CO2. So you can have buildings designed using this, potentially acting as carbon sinks. Moving on now to water security issues, you have drought. This can be quite significant in many areas of the world. This illustration here is showing the areas where high levels of drought can be observed generally throughout the year. And the next slide shows the actual situation that can occur in the drier months. And due to climate change, we're having increased incidences of drought occurring around the world. So it's quite a significant problem, and it's affecting people in both rich and poor countries. Okay, so on we go. So there are a variety of measures you can take to help address drought risk. One of these is actually using less water. So sometimes there's contributory solution to this can be quite simple, such as fixing leaking taps and cisterns, which can save thousands of litres a year of water. You can also do things such as install aerators on your taps, which can allow you to have the same washing experience, but significantly reduce water use, almost up to 90% through using such technology. Another thing you can do to cut down on your water use is by using water-efficient toilets. So eco-friendly toilets can use around about 4.85 litres per flush compared to 22.7 litres for the old-fashioned toilet. So you can make significant water savings in commercial premises and in public health buildings, domestic homes, etc., through introducing such measures. And all of these, when they're added together, can significantly reduce the overall water use and reduce the amount of money that people are having to pay on their water bills as well. And if you're wanting to find out any more ways to help address drought and water security issues, the guidelines I've shown here, the lead reference building guide for design innovation, well version 2, and BREEAM give you further information on measures you can take, including storage of rainwater and reuse of grey water that has been previously used within buildings. Okay, so you can save water. You can also use technology now to go and generate water from the air itself. So there are a variety of systems that can do it. The one that's featured here is WaterGen, which can create large-scale water generation, up to 6,000 litres of clean water being generated daily from the air. The only thing it requires for this is an electricity supply, and the collection of water is generally more efficient at night when the air is cooler, and also when the electricity tariffs are usually lower. So if you want to find out more about these kinds of technologies, go online. There's plenty available there. Another problem that we have to think about is sea level rise. So lots of countries are experiencing increased levels of floods. Bangkok is actually the country that is presently slated to have the highest risk from sea level rise by 2050. A variety of measures that can be taken to help go and reduce such risks. One of these is the concept of the sponge city. So you're introducing lots of green areas with parks, trees, and also with lakes, etc., that can capture rainfall. And so acting as a collection point for that, and instead of the water being spread into the areas where we're living in to such a great extent. And the person who came up with the main concept for that is Dr. Kong Yang Yu, who's seen in the illustration there. So this is an illustration of the Yanhui Zoo Park in the People's Republic of China during normal conditions. The next slide shows the same location during flood conditions to show how it operates. So as you can see, it's able to capture a lot of water to prevent overflow or at least greatly reduce the effects from that. And with the high level walkways it has, it's still allowing people to access the areas they would do under normal conditions. Locally, you can also go and take measures to go and help reduce the likelihood of flood risks, and a wide variety of measures can be undertaken. Stormwater planters can be one of these, where you're actually collecting the runoff in these specially prepared areas, and they can help go and filter the runoff as well. So that can help reduce the loading in the area and the likelihood of flooding. There's other kinds of measures you can take on board as well round about your building, such as green parking. So you can have the parking lots designed so that they can actually capture water to a far higher extent. As part of this, you can introduce bioswales, permeable pavements, permeable road surfaces, and even rain gardens. Other measures you can take on board for protection as well is actually in the fine detail for the buildings that you're designing. So you can have things such as flash flood doors, you can have anti-flood gullies, you can have non-return valves on your pipes so that you don't have backflow happening, which can sometimes happen with raw sewage, which is not what you want to have coming into your building. So you can seal the outside of the building. You can also reduce the likelihood of water coming in through foul water coming in through toilets and sinks, etc., through such measures. So it can greatly increase the resilience of your building. You can also take other measures, such as having your plug points up at high level, etc., to reduce any likelihood of flood damage. Another measure that you can take is things such as aquadam that can be used to protect individual buildings or groups of buildings. And basically it's like a large bicycle tire that is filled with water around about the time that the actual flooding is starting to occur. It can be very quickly activated and provide a high level of protection. As you can see by the soundbite there, a group of trained people could install a 4x100 foot sandbag dam in a little over 4 hours. Alternatively, if you can have two people installing an aquadam of similar size in around about 30 minutes. So you've got very little notification, or you have very little manpower available to take protective measures. This could be one kind of solution that could be of interest to you. You also have the older style solutions. So this is traditional Thai building, and you're having the building, the main areas of the building actually being raised up on pillars. So when floods do occur, the people are still safe and their main possessions are still safe. And during dry periods, they have lower areas for amenity, and also they have increased airflow going underneath the living accommodation, which again helps lower the temperatures there. So lots of benefits being able to be created from that. These concepts are also still being used or proposed in the current day, such as this proposal for a multi-purpose hall and emergency shelter over in Bangladesh. And you have the upper level resting on pillars, as you can see. The difference between this proposed building and the last one is the upper level is also able to float. So you've got the pillars and you have sleeves around those pillars, which can actually go up and down with the water level. So compared to the previous instance where you had the floor level there, if the water rose above that, you'd be having problems. In this particular situation, the upper floor level can still continue to rise. So you should be able to protect yourself even from very high flood water. There's other kinds of initiatives as well that can be used to protect against floods. One of them is actually building floating buildings. So you have floating houses in the Netherlands. You also have them elsewhere in the world, including in Thailand, as you can see by the photograph on the right. You can even have floating buildings being designed on dry ground. So you have all the traditional amenities around about you. But if you do have a flood instance, the building itself is going to be fully protected. And you have cities as well that are now under development in various places around about the world that are floating to help address such risks. You've got the Maldives floating city being one particular development. It also has a hospital situated within it. And you have the oceanic Busan in South Korea that is currently under construction, and the UN is involved in its development. And if you want to find out any more about climate resilient design, the UNET publication, which is shown here, can give you some very good initial pointers for that, challenges and impacts of the changing climate, and the kinds of approaches and design principles that you can take. There's also lots of information available on the web, so if there's any particular areas that are really appealing to you, you can look at them in greater detail. Okay, on to the final part of this, looking at how well-being and infection risks can be taken into account when you're using design thinking for health. Often the buildings we design have got very low light levels. Outdoors in sunlight, you will be exposed to over 100,000 lux, and in full daylight, you'll be exposed to levels around about 10,000 to 25,000 lux. But indoors, many people are spending large parts of the day in low light levels of around about 1 to 300 lux, and many of them seldom have exposures to greater than 1,000 lux for over an hour a day. And as well as being wasteful in terms of energy use, with artificial lighting having to help increase people's exposures indoors, there can be health effects, detrimental health effects from such exposures. So this is something that has been known about for a very long period of time with regards to the design of healthcare buildings. As an example of this, Florence Nightingale back in 1860 was saying, and I'll read the quote for you, it's the unqualified result of all my experience with the sick that second only to their need for fresh air is their need of light. And that after a close room, so that's one with very little light, what hurts them, that's one with very little ventilation, but what hurts them most is a dark room, and that it is not only light but direct sunlight that they want. So what we should be doing is looking more into the biological needs of the people who occupy these spaces, whether they're patients or whether they're healthcare staff, so we can help optimize their exposures. And as an example of this with regards to infection risk, it's been shown that if people are experiencing higher levels of daylight during the day, in this case, the testing was looking at people who are working next windows or people who are away from window areas, you can have a difference in the amount of melatonin. This can influence the amount of melatonin that the body produces at night. And melatonin is the hormone that the body uses to heal itself. And it's been shown that if you have increased levels of nighttime melatonin, it can help protect you against a wide variety of viruses, including the coronavirus. So quickly looking back over the bar graphs there, you can see in the condition when the people have been sitting next to a window during the daytime, at night their melatonin levels are far higher than if they'd been in the situation when they were sitting away from a window. So natural daylight can be a big boost to the immune system. It can also help improve sleep quality and reduce the likelihood of mood disorder. So you've got lots of benefits that can help there. Okay, other benefits of natural light. It's been shown that the time of day as well is really important with regards to when people get exposure, so you can help design your buildings accordingly. So it's been shown with patients, if they receive natural daylight and sunlight in through the windows first thing in the morning, they have a shorter recovery time, can be around about 16 to 41% shorter recovery time. They have increased pain relief, so they don't need as much in the way of medication, and also they have reduced stress levels. So these are all really important things to take into account when you're wanting to be able to increase the efficiency of the health services you're providing, and also if you're wanting to reduce the amount of your budget that has to go on medication for individuals. It's additionally been shown that if you're having people who are recovering from chemotherapy or having increased light exposures, they're experiencing reduced levels of fatigue, so you're getting further levels of benefit from that. And previous work I've done has also indicated that potentially the reason that lots of people were feeling fatigue during the COVID-19 pandemic was basically they were locked down indoors. They're experiencing low levels of light, so their body wasn't set up to be as active as it otherwise would be, so they're getting tired far easier. Okay, with regards to pathogens, it's also been shown that natural daylight and sunlight can kill pathogens, so this is something that should be taken into account in your designs. Back in 1877, it was shown that sunlight can be used to sterilize microbes, and the sterilization effect was noted with light that passed through both clear glass and blue-colored glass, but the microbial growth still occurred with glass that was red tinted or yellow tinted, so ones which blocked blue and violet light within the natural visible spectrum. And this is something that is not generally taken into account in the design of buildings and the specification of glass. Normally, the kind of glazing that we use for energy efficiency and for blocking heat ingress blocks out those parts of the light wavelength. So the blue and violet part of the visible spectrum that can kill pathogens are also often greatly reduced in concentrations with many modern types of glass. But the good news is there are some types of glass, such as the opti-white that is shown here with the purple line, that it has increased levels of those wavelengths being able to come through. So you're specifying that you should be able to help reduce the incidence of infection from airborne pathogens and also pathogens that have rested on surfaces. So you can compare the opti-white with one of the worst case scenarios, such as opti-float bronze, which really lowers the reduction of those biocidal wavelengths. Okay, right, and here's another example, again from way back, showing the effectiveness of the blue and violet part of the spectrum on being able to inactivate pathogens, and in this case, anthrax spores. So you had basically a spectrum of light that was shone onto this dish for a 5-hour period, and it was shown that when you're having the blue and violet, you're having increased amounts of inactivation, but the colonies that were exposed to yellow, orange, and red light, they germinated as readily as the ones that were kept in the dark. So this is a really important detail to take into account when you're designing. Also, when you're designing, you can take into account the solar path diagrams, so how the sunlight passes around the buildings and the kinds of measures that you can take to optimize the shading within the building, and also to optimize the light ingress for the building, so you get the maximum biological benefit for the individual, and also you're able to address infection risks at the same kind of measures being taken. So, quick summary for you. There are many measures that can be taken to address the challenges we face. Multi-layered thinking, where you're trying to think about how you can create numerous levels of benefit, can often help you to achieve the best outcomes. And that is it. And thank you. Swadee krap.